Bat and ball sports for the Tennessee Volunteers have been going mighty, mighty well. The women, the Lady Vols, in the Women's College World Series. On the other side, the men's with the baseball team showed up well in Hoover for the SEC tournament, got themselves a national seed, and will be hosting a regional. We're going to talk all about that and more with a special guest here on this edition of Chatt It Up Sports. What's up? I'm your host, Greg Larnard. Again, welcome to another edition of Chatt It Up Sports, a special edition. Normally, we'll do Mondays, either record or go live, and then Thursdays, either record or go live, and then post on Fridays. But today, we have a special guest, and so we're having a special live morning show for you here of Chatt It Up Sports. Make sure you follow us all over social media at Chatt It Up Sports. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts as well at Chatt It Up Sports and on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, rate, tell a friend, all that good stuff. All right, welcoming into the stage and onto the show is a man who knows much, much more about the Tennessee Volunteers, whether it's the basketball, baseball, softball, anything when it comes to the Tennessee sports athletic scene. He is a graduate of the University of Tennessee at Knoxville as well. Put your hands together for the one, the only, my man, Ryan Schumpert. What's up, Shump?
Not much, G. How you doing?
Yeah, things are good. It's not quite a Vol Talk Thursday, but maybe somebody.
Now we're a day off.
Yeah, we are a day off technically with when we're recording this or doing this live, but maybe somebody will listen to it on a Thursday and have that nostalgic feel from the Word with G on ESPN Chattanooga for our Vol Talk Thursdays. But let's get in here because obviously there's some big things going on with the bat and ball sports, and we'll start with the softball team. I know you were in Hoover covering the baseball team, but I know you were following along with softball, and they've had a really nice year there. They're advancing to the Women's College World Series for the second time in 3 years, the 9th trip overall, and all of them coming since 2005. So Karen Weekly obviously doing some good things there, but not quite able to get them over the hump to win a College World Series yet, but hopefully they'll be on their way this year. Talk a little bit about the testament of this team's mental fortitude to come back from losing after game one and then having to beat a pitcher and a player like Jordy Ball in 2 straight games in Nebraska in order to punch their ticket. How impressed were you with that?
Yeah, I was really impressed. I think especially from the standpoint that they didn't really play very well in game one on Friday, made some defensive mistakes that led to Nebraska scoring runs. And you just knew going into that series with that pitching matchup of Jordy Ball and Karlyn Pickens that the margins were going to be really, really small and runs were going to be hard to come by. So to make some of those defensive mistakes to fall behind early, I think you saw, even though they didn't by any means come back and even make it really that close of a game on Friday, you saw the offense have a little bit of success. I believe scratched off a run there in the 6th or 7th inning. So you just saw a good response, and I think maybe even more impressive than that, they fell behind 2-0 in game 2 on Saturday. So, you talk about on top of just losing game 1 and not playing well in game 1, you were from the jump down in game 2, and to be able to respond, I think is a testament to this team. And, more than anything, I think probably a testament to Karlyn Pickens, who has, carried might be a little bit dramatic of a word, but I'm going to use it anyway, has kind of carried this team for much of the season. And certainly with their back against the wall this past weekend against Nebraska, she rose her game and up to a whole nother level and was really just dominant and is one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, the Lady Vols are headed back to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, she was awesome in those 2 games on Saturday. And then on Sunday, she had a combined 21 strikeouts. And again, you're going toe-to-toe with another All-American. And like you mentioned, they got down on Saturday. That offense had to come back against a really good pitcher. And I really like what Karen Weekly did and decided to make some lineup changes and to put some of their better their hitters that hit Jordy Ball a little bit better up in the lineup. Most notably Ellie Dodge, who had a couple of big home runs in that game. And then obviously Karlyn Pickens resetting her own record for the fastest pitch thrown in a softball game, which was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think that also speaks to just like finding a way to win at this time of year. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. And Dodge had, I mean, from a statistical standpoint, been one of Tennessee's worst hitters in their starting lineup this season. Had not been great, but she hits the 2-run homer in game 2, and Tennessee moves her up into the 3 spot for game 3, and she rewarded that. Hits a solo home run in the first inning. That was all Tennessee needed. That was all that it ended up taking to win. And I mean, a couple minor jams mixed in there, but largely it didn't feel like Tennessee was just escaping danger either, every inning or anything like that either. Pickens was pretty dominant, just giving up a couple hits. And I think that, you talk about the defense, Tennessee played good defense behind her in game 3 and minimized mistakes and just kind of did enough offensively, which has kind of been the calling card for this team all season. Like, this team's not a great offensive team. It's about, I think, just scraping things by and finding a way to score enough runs to give yourself a chance to win. And when you have Karlyn Pickens, it doesn't take a whole lot to do that.
That's very true. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because going into Oklahoma City, to me, I think that's going to be one of the major keys going into this run, where to me, it's going to be what's going to hinder them in not winning a national championship in softball. I'm glad that they got there. I don't think that they're going to win in Oklahoma City. Obviously, a tough matchup right off the jump against Oklahoma. I know they took 2 out of 3 in Norman this past season during the regular season as well, which is obviously a very impressive thing. But the only way that they can win the national championship in the Women's College World Series, again, in my eyes, and it seems like in yours as well, it feels like they're going to have to be carried by Karlyn Pickens.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think at this point, anything is kind of icing on the cake. And I think you can say that most years where, and with men's team, baseball team, or the softball team, like you make it Omaha, you make it Oklahoma City, it's a good year. You kind of see what happens. But this team has a little bit of a similar vibe to me as the 23 Tennessee baseball team, where it's just, it doesn't feel like it has the offense. It has the all-around talent to win a national championship. And it's just a big achievement in its own sake to make it to the College World Series. And then you see what happens. Maybe you find a way to win a game or two. And I know they do the format. It's not like as divided as the men's, where it's just 4-team, but tough side of the bracket for Tennessee to end on, and tough that you get Oklahoma in the first game. So we'll see what happens. And I think to that point, that's where, like, it, not to be Debbie Downer or anything like that, but that's where it hurts last year to me. It felt like they had a team that could make it deep run in Oklahoma City, and to get upset to Alabama. I think that's in a lot of ways why that hurt so much. But I think it goes both ways. Like, to not be able to get there and make a run last year hurts, but I think it makes you appreciate and makes you applaud a team that certainly it was good all year. I don't mean to act like they were bad or something, but a team that was never any sort of given that they were going to make it to Oklahoma City. I think it makes you appreciate it all the more for them to play good softball down the stretch of the season and to find a way after dropping game 1 of a super to come back and win that series.
Absolutely. And again, you never know what can happen. Karlyn Pickens can get hot. The offense could pick up, and all it takes is a couple of timely hits and big home runs like Ellie Dodge had. So we'll see what the Vols have. Obviously, we're wishing them well. All right, let's go over to the baseball side of things now. The Vols go into the regionals as the number 14 overall national seed, and they will host a regional, which is great, over at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. In that regional, it'll feature, if you're not up to date with that, number 2 Wake Forest, number 3 Cincinnati, and the team that they'll be facing, the number 4 seed, the Miami of Ohio Redhawks. That game will be on Friday at 6 o'clock. The Vols have not lost a regional game, knock on wood, since 2019. And I'm just getting this from your article. So if it happens, I'm not blaming myself. I'm blaming you. Okay?
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's completely fair.
They started out the season 28-2, man. And they only won 1 of 7 conference series since that hot start. Talk to me a little bit about the biggest reason why, or how things have sort of went wrong down the stretch for UT, and what do you feel like are the biggest issues for them heading into the postseason here?
Yeah, I think that's almost one of the reasons why there was a lot of pessimism around the team the back half of SEC play. Is I don't think you would just point to there being one issue. I think you had an offense that had multiple weekends where they really struggled, and were not competitive. Kentucky comes to mind. Texas A&M, at least that doubleheader, they were pretty lifeless that day. A lot of, I think they did a couple series stretch where, there were some most consecutive games or most games in a so-and-so stretch where they scored 3 or less runs in the Tony Vitello era. There was some of that. There were bullpen issues. There have been bullpen issues throughout the season for Tennessee, trying to find some consistency from that group. And then some of this tag teams with the starting pitching and Marcus Phillips, but defense has plagued this team at times, holding base runners when Marcus Phillips, who has been effective for Tennessee as their Saturday starter or game 2 starter. Ole Miss stole 7 bases against him. Kentucky stole 8 bases against him. Vanderbilt and one other team, maybe Auburn, stole 4 bases against them. So, you've had that issue there. That I think is just magnified by some defensive mistakes. So there's been some issues with a little bit of everything. Now, I think in the last couple weeks, even before Omaha or before Hoover, where they had a good weekend, even I think you would say at Arkansas, and I think even you would say at Vanderbilt, there were signs of the offense being better, a lot more consistently competitive at bats. I think you've had a couple signs of at least a couple bullpen pitchers emerging and throwing the ball pretty well for Tennessee. And the defense continues to be a little bit hit or miss. So, and I think, look, a really big part of it, they've played really good teams. The final 4 series of regular season, they played at LSU, who's number 6 overall seed. They played home against Auburn, who's number 4 overall seed. They played home against Vanderbilt, who's the number 1 overall seed. And they played at Arkansas, who's the number 2 overall seed. So your last 4 series are against 6 of the best teams in the country. And in a lot of those series, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, LSU, those series were a pitch or 2 away from going the other direction. So this Tennessee team is flawed. They have had issues in a number of different areas, but they've also, I think, the last handful of weeks haven't been super far off from beating some good teams in series. But when you don't do it and you stack that on what was a frustrating back half of the season for Tennessee, certainly it leads to people being, upset and rightfully so.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we will talk a little bit more about the bullpen and the starters and who should start when. But before we get to that, talk to me a little bit. I saw you did a preview on RockyTopInsider.com. And again, if you want to get Ryan's stuff, just go over to RockyTopInsider.com. It's a great website for all you Vol fans. Talk to me a little bit about the preview here for the Red Hawks and what Vol fans should kind of be looking out for with this bunch, their strengths, their weaknesses, all of that.
Yeah, I think it's a good offense when you talk about for a 4 seed. I think just overall, it's probably Miami Ohio is probably an upper half 4 seed. I don't think that I would say they're the best one, but they're a solid team. Right around 50th nationally in a number of hitting stats. I want to say maybe 49th in on base percentage, or maybe it's batting average, and 53rd in slugging. 7 guys in the lineup that hit over 300. So deep in that aspect of that. There are a number of guys that can beat you, not just 1 or 2 really good hitters. On the reverse side, pretty big black hole at the end in the 8 or 9 spots. So it's a good offense. It's not like a Wright State level offense where you saw that in 2021. You're like, oh boy, Tennessee's pitching staff needs to be on if they're going to limit. I'm forgetting what Wright State's mascot is, but whatever their nickname is. But it's certainly an offense that could do some damage against Tennessee, and a starting pitcher that has been good, not great. He's been good in the MAC. I think he's collected, I want to say 10 wins this season, and has overall good numbers, but not anything super overpowering. I don't think anything that, like I said, Tennessee's offense has largely been better the last couple of weeks. I feel like Tennessee should be able to start out the NCAA tournament with a strong offensive performance, and with Liam Doyle looking like he'll pitch, that certainly should be enough for the Vols.
Okay, well, you just mentioned it, and that's what Tony Vitello says to the media. He says, "Hey, we're probably gonna stick with the status quo, the norm of Doyle on Friday, and then Phillips on Saturday." But you wrote an article detailing why you believe it should be potentially the other way. And again, it's not written in stone. Things could change and they could switch it up. And maybe they just want, Miami of Ohio to think that they will throw Doyle. I don't know. The mind games in sports and all that stuff, I know you know it very well. But talk to me about why you believe that a different matchup would be better suited for the Vols.
Yeah, I think, you're talking about the SEC pitcher of the year for one. So it's that aspect. Liam Doyle, I talked about, Tennessee, despite struggling, they avoided being swept in SEC play, which in a large part is why they're hosting, is they were able to collect wins. And Liam Doyle's a large part of the reason they didn't get swept, is because they won most of the days that he pitched. You felt good about him getting deep into the games the vast majority of weekends. So I think that's an aspect of it. And look, this is an age-old debate. I feel like you see it every year across 16 regional sites. Is the one seed going to throw their top guy in game 1 or game 2? Tennessee really never does it. Now, there's been differing reasons for that to why it didn't make sense in years past. I think the thing with Marcus Phillips, and I touched on it, his inability to hold base runners. Miami, Ohio doesn't steal bases. Not aggressive on the base pass at all. So I think you felt, one, good about that not being an issue. And like I said, when that hasn't been an issue, Phillips has been good for Tennessee. That's really the one blemish on what's otherwise been a good season for him. Maybe not a great season, but a good season. And then you throw into the fact of Doyle, like I said, being so good. I think it goes twofold. Cincinnati, the 3 seed, is fantastic at stealing bases. Top 15 in the country. That's how they make their hay. So I think you would go, one, if Tennessee does what they're going to do, you don't want to see Cincinnati in that game because they're going to be able to force the issue a lot with Phillips. And then 2, I think Wake Forest has a really good offense. I think Wake Forest offense is the best grouping or category to any team brings into the Knoxville Regional. I think it's 7th in on-base percentage, maybe 13th in slugging. 10 guys that have hit 10 plus, 6 guys that have hit 10 plus home runs. Small ballpark in Winston-Salem too, but we know Lindsey Nelson Stadium plays awful small this time of year. So I think it goes kind of both ways to where you don't want to see Phillips against Cincinnati if you're Tennessee. And if you have to play Wake Forest, you'd really like to see Liam Doyle, your best guy. So those are kind of some of the surface level reasons that I think it makes a lot of sense. Tennessee's pitching depth isn't great to where Tennessee loses either of their first 2 games. I think it's going to be really hard for them to get out of this regional. So I think that adds to, Tony Vitello talked about you just trying to keep the focus on the game in front of you. In a lot of years, Tennessee's had good pitching depth, and I think it would be a big difference of crawling out of the loser's bracket with a game 1 loss to a game 2 loss. This year, I think it's going to be really hard for them to crawl out of the loser's bracket if they lose either of those games. So maybe I don't put as much stock into that as I would in some other years. So that's why I would go with Liam Doyle on Saturday and Marcus Phillips to open the weekend. But, certainly it seems like Tennessee's going to go the other way, and that's not strange. That's how they've handled things in the past. Right. That's how a lot of teams. LSU threw Paul Skeens the first game of a regional in a game they won like 14-0. So it's not like Tony Vitello is out on an island with this take or this philosophy or anything like that.
For sure. And he talked about, hey, there's no guarantees for tomorrow. You could go and Marcus Phillips could throw and he could pitch terribly and then you lose. And it's like, well, okay, well, at least we do have our ace still going in the next game. But again, you can't plan for tomorrow. You have to kind of plan for the game in front of you. And that's kind of what he's doing. And it seems like that's probably what they're going to do there with Tennessee. But it's interesting because now for me personally, being in softball and coaching, at the Division I level and things like that, and seeing this game, because I've been in baseball for a very long time. And, you know it as well as I do that, hey, softball pitchers can basically throw all day as long as they're conditioned. And so pitching depth is less of a worry in softball, where like we saw this weekend, you can throw Jordy Ball and you can throw Karlyn Pickens at each other all weekend long, basically. And I know Tennessee went to the pen in that first game, but baseball, it's much more strategy of, hey, I got to figure out when I can throw my guys because they need adequate rest and how much I can throw them and how many pitches and all that. So a lot goes into that, obviously, in their decision. And you mentioned the lack of potential pitching depth. I wanted to ask you just quickly about what type of impact do you think A.J. Russell and Brandon Arvidsson are going to have on this postseason run? To me, I know you wrote a little bit about them. Those could be two big guys, either as starters or coming out of the pen, that could have a big impact on how far Tennessee goes.
No doubt. I think those are the two guys that you would look at Tennessee's bullpen and say you have the most trust in, and they both are long relief type guys. I mean, that's the nature of college baseball compared to the MLB. I think both threw over 80 pitches in their outings in Hoover last week. So you're talking about long outings. Russell isn't as much of a surprise. Like, look, he was a guy that lit the world on fire opening day against Texas Tech in 24. As soon as he's opening game starter, has the arm injury. They couldn't really figure it out over the course of the season. Ends up having kind of a lesser version of Tommy John, which allowed him to get back quicker. And it's been a buildup, so it hasn't all been perfect for him. But you've seen him, his last handful of outings, be really effective for Tennessee. And you knew the talent was there. You'd seen it. He's a guy that, even through all the injuries, has been pretty consistently like a top 75 prospect in the MLB draft this summer. Arvidsson, you knew the talent was there too, just from what people talked about him and watching him pitch some. But the junior college prospect, there hadn't been a bunch of consistency. And I think you would have said, or I would have said 2 weeks ago, one of the more disappointing arms in Tennessee's pitching staff this year from what expectations were. But he's turned it on. 4 straight outings where he's been really good. His strikeout rate in those 4 outings is 45%. I think probably just as important. His walk rate had been a big issue for him early in the season. That's down. He's got 1 walk in those 4 outings where he's thrown, I think, around 9 innings. So that's been a real game changer for Tennessee staff to have Arvidsson, because the talent is there. You're talking about a 6'4", 6'5", wiry left-handed guy that throws in the mid-90s with a really good slider to kind of throw off of that. So those are the 2 guys that you trust the most if you're Tennessee, I think, heading into this weekend. And Nate Snead's probably right there too. Even though he's had a shaky year, he's gotten the job done in 3 of his last 4 outings. Was really good against Texas and Hoover. And look, he was the 1A or 1B bullpen arm on a team that won the national championship last year. So I think maintains to be confidence in him, even though he's struggled. But Russell and Arvidsson and what they can do, and I think different types of roles. I think they could start long relief. We saw it last week. We've seen Russell close games for Tennessee too. All those types of things. They can fit into a lot of different roles for Tennessee, and that's so important when you go into a regional where you might have to play, 5 games in 3 days, 3 or 4 days, and a lot of these college teams only have 6, 7, 8 pitchers they trust. So any guy that can fill a bunch of different roles is really, really valuable.
Yeah, no doubt about that when it comes to baseball. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the pitching. I want to talk a little bit about the offense as well. And I know one of the big stories or question marks coming into this season was at first base. And before we touch on the offense in its totality, I want to just touch on Andrew Fisher in the season that he's had, and where Osuna was kind of there and then, couldn't get all the way there with the whole transfer thing and the NCAA and all of that. So talk to me just a little bit about Andrew Fisher and the impact that he's had in sort of grabbing hold of that first base spot and having a lot of success.
Yeah, I think it even is more convoluted than even that. Like, Alex Perry left fall as the leader to start at first base, and he left Tennessee's program in, I think it was January, maybe it was December, with some mental health stuff, just taking some time away from baseball. So that's kind of what threw things up. The Diego Pavia ruling made Tennessee and Osuna feel like there was a good chance that he would get eligible. He transfers from D2 Tampa, which is one of the best Division II programs, been in North Carolina. You said it, they haven't been able to get him eligible this season. So Andrew Fisher, who was kind of a DH third baseman at Ole Miss last season, when Tennessee landed him, I think that was even a question that I'd asked some of the coaches, is like, could this guy play first? Does they have a hole at first? And it was like, no, he's a third baseman all the way. He wants to play third. We feel good about him at third. And I'm telling you, Tennessee does a lot of cross training and guys working in other positions in the fall and in the preseason. And look, I'm not there every day, but I probably watched some scrimmage 10 times, somewhere in that range, in the fall and spring. I didn't see Andrew Fisher take a rep at first base before the week before season. So he really did not get much work there, and he's been good. I think that's a testament to just his character and team first nature, that he wants to be a third baseman in professional baseball, but he has gone and played a position he's really never played, and he's played it well. He's not a Gold Glove candidate by any means, but he also hasn't been an issue for Tennessee over there. Like you would mention it, Andrew, there's a lot of defensive issues you could talk about with Tennessee. Andrew Fisher's not one that ever gets brought up for a good reason. So I think that from one element has been really important, and I think speaks really highly to him as a person, a teammate. And then the offense, like we talked about, Tennessee's offense has been inconsistent. He's been the consistent guy for him. He's been on base every single game for Tennessee this season. And again, I think that's where maybe the most impressive. Like, he hit, I want to say 20 home runs at Ole Miss last year, somewhere in that category. You knew he was going to hit a lot of home runs. You knew the power was going to be there. That part hasn't been surprising, but his on-base percentage has gone way up. He has more walks than strikeouts. His strikeout rate has gone way down compared to last year. And certainly I didn't watch him every day last season, but just from looking at the numbers last year and watching him every day this year, he's a much, much more complete player and a complete hitter, and just a really, really tough out, while still having some of that power, and a guy that can do a lot of damage with guys on base. So he's been to me, Tennessee's best hitter this season. And again, like I said a minute ago, on a lineup that's been inconsistent for a lot of the season, he's been kind of the model of consistency.
Yeah, and obviously, going into the question I wanted to ask you next, he's obviously going to be a key cog in Tennessee having any success this postseason within their offenses. He's been the most consistent and the best hitter within that offense, generally hitting in that 2 hole. But talk to me about other players other than Fisher within this lineup that will be, in your opinion, most key for them to have success this weekend and beyond, in that kind of sustained success to hopefully another College World Series run.
Well, I think one of the things that I like the most about the way Tennessee's offense has kind of developed the last month maybe is, the first half of their struggles in SEC play, unproductive at bats from the back of the lineup. They had 4 freshmen who were playing a lot and kind of came out in fire in non-conference play and came back down to earth. I think you've seen maybe back to the median. Levi Clark is one of the best at bats on this Tennessee team. He's been pretty consistently the DH starter the last few weeks. Cannon Peoples isn't a young guy, but I think you've seen his bat stabilize a little bit later in the season, and typically in the 7-hole, he's hit well. And then Manny Marin, a freshman who's had some nice moments, and has been more solid too. So I think that's something you just have to touch on at the start. So I think that's raised the floor of the offense a little bit, just getting more productive at bats from the back half. Now, what will probably decide more of how far they go is, can Tennessee get these guys at the top all going at once? And that's why for a lot of the season, I felt good about Tennessee's offense getting right, because I just felt like there was too much talent. And that's kind of been the issue, is that they haven't been able to get everybody going at once. Gavin Keelan, he had a hamstring injury that hampered him for a handful of weeks before that, which was, again, mostly playing lesser competition and a little bit of SEC play. He was Tennessee's best hitter. He was better than Fisher. He was a Golden Spikes type candidate. He's been up and down since coming back from the hamstring injury. Hunter Ensley has been consistent. He has been the guy that really picked up where he left off last year. Though he did have a bad weekend at Arkansas. Dalton Bargo has been big emerging. He hits in the cleanup spot. And Dean Curley, who obviously his defensive issues have been, readily reported on and hard to miss. But his offense struggled too. I think he let his defense affect his offense for a while. To me, still probably not the power numbers you would like to see from him, at least that you thought you might get entering the season. But to me, the last month, he's been really good at the plate and has gotten on at a really high clip. So can those 5 guys are really talented? Can Tennessee get consistent production from them? And they get all those guys clicking at one time? Because if they do, I think this offense has a ton of talent and can take this team really far. And I continue to think Tennessee's gotten closer to that. Like last weekend in Hoover, Bargo had a bad weekend. Really, all those other guys played well last week. And you saw Tennessee get 20 hits against Alabama. You saw Tennessee come from 4-0 down in game or against Texas, who won the regular season. And Texas probably has the best bullpen in the SEC, threw their 2 best bullpen arms, which is when Tennessee mounted that comeback. And certainly not a whole lot of good things to say about the offense against Vanderbilt, but you saw some more consistency from that group. And I think there's reasons for optimism that Tennessee, facing a little bit less talented pitching here in the regional this weekend, can get things going at Lindsey Nelson.
All right, so my last one for you, kind of when it comes to Tennessee, I have something else I want to ask you about as well. 2 things, actually, outside of the Tennessee Vols I want to ask you about. But my last one on the Vols would be, what do you think that this team's ceiling is going into this regional? Do they get out of this regional? I know if they win it, most likely outcome, again, we don't know for sure, because I saw Texas A&M, the number 1 overall seed in the softball regional, lose to, what was it? Who did they lose to?
Liberty.
Yeah, Liberty. Okay, anyway, so so you never know. But if it stacks up the way that we think it should, they would have to go to Fayetteville and face Arkansas again. So give me your thoughts going into this regional about, do you think they can get out of it? How, again, can they get back to the College World Series in your estimation? Like, what is your read on this team going into the regionals?
Yeah, I think I would pick them to win the regional this weekend. I think they're capable of getting to the College World Series. And Arkansas is a really good team. I think that's one of the positive things you would say. Like, there's no juggernaut this year, and Tennessee's a talented team. They have too many questions for me to think like a deep run in Omaha is maybe not possible, but like is realistic, I guess. They have too many issues for me to think that that's realistic, but like you just stack it up talent wise, team by team. There's not a lot of teams I would say on any given day Tennessee can't beat. Frankly, there's no teams I would say on any given day Tennessee can't beat. So, yeah, I think this team's definitely possible getting to Omaha. I think you kind of look at it in a similar way to softball, maybe a little bit different. Softball's a little bit higher, but if you make it to the College World Series, I think you're happy. You're really excited, and you let the chips fall where they may. Even if you just make it to Super Regional, like I know people aren't going to be happy about that if they lose in a Super to Arkansas, and I'm not telling people to be happy about it either. But for all of Tennessee's shortcomings this season, and you've seen the struggles the last handful of years of defending champions, the next season, like, down year, lost what Tennessee lost. You make it to Super Regional, you can do a whole lot worse than that. I certainly don't think that would be some terrible season or anything. So I think the key is for Tennessee to get out this weekend. I think they should get out this weekend. And then you kind of let the chips fall where they may. Arkansas would be a really tough series. But same time, Tennessee won a game down there in a series a couple weeks ago and had Liam Doyle on the mound in game 2, and you felt good about them winning it. So it's not like we haven't seen Tennessee kind of go blow to blow with Arkansas already. I was going to say this season, it was literally a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
A week and a half ago at this point. It'll be a little bit further by the time that they would potentially be facing off. But it's certainly, for as shaky as this season's been, I think that's the beauty of college baseball. You get to the postseason, really anything can happen.
That's right. That is the beauty of sports. All right, before we wrap up and let you roll, Shump, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, because they've been playing so darn well. How much have you been able to pay attention to your Cubbies and my former Met, Pete Crow Armstrong?
Yeah, a lot. No, I've been watching them as much as I can. That's actually, it was funny. And this shows how much faith I had in Tennessee's baseball team going down to Hoover. Is that the Cubs were up in Cincinnati last weekend, and I was going to try to get up to a game in Cincinnati on Saturday. Obviously, didn't end up happening. But on the reverse side of it was kind of nice, because when I'm in Knoxville and the Cubs play the Reds, I'm blacked out on MLB TV. I can't watch them. Down in Birmingham, I was good to watch them.
Hey, there you go.
But no, I've been trying to watch them as much as I can, and it's been a lot of fun. I think you talked about the ceiling of this team with some of their pitching injuries. Feels like probably like a deep run into postseason isn't likely to happen, especially as good as the NL is. I mean, the NL is stacked. But they're a really fun team to watch, and certainly after the last few years, I'm just enjoying the ride right now, and a lot of fun young guys. I mean, you said PCA is one of the best players in baseball at 23. Matt Shaw's played well since coming back up. Cade Horton, who kind of carried Oklahoma to the College World Series finals a few years ago, has gotten some chances with those pitching injuries, and has been fun. So it's been a fun season to Memorial Day, and hopefully they can make it a fun summer as well.
Yeah, it was a fun series. I know the Mets, I think, took 2 out of 3 or whatever it was when we played y'all, but the Cubbies got a good team. They're scrappy. Pete Crow Armstrong, as you mentioned, he's awesome. Obviously, somebody you wish the Mets didn't let go of, but that's neither here nor there. I'm glad if he went anywhere, it was to your team.
I appreciate it.
But you guys have it, as as of right now, when we're doing this show on a Wednesday. The Cubbies have the best run differential, for whatever that's worth, in the National League, and the same record as my New York Mets, 34-21. So yeah, been a fun season so far in Major League Baseball. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about quickly was, I'm digging the flow. Are we going to keep this going? Is this something that we're actively working on, or is it just kind of like, hey, it's here, we're letting it flow?
A little bit in between. I would say we've been actively working on it. We're hitting the point where, like, I had been like, let's see what we're working with until we get to summer, and then summer I might cut it short again just because of the heat. Yeah. So we'll see. My hand will be forced when Tennessee baseball season ends. That's my official start of summer. It's when Tennessee baseball season ends. So we'll see what happens. We may keep it. We may go back to a short summer cut while the weather's hot.
There you go. And then maybe let it grow out again in the fall when things start to cool down a little bit more. But
exactly right.
It's been good to get a chance to catch up with you, my man. Follow him all over Twitter at rshump00. And of course, all of his great content over at RockyTopInsider.com. It's always good to catch up with you, my man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, G. Enjoyed it as always.
There he goes, Ryan Schumpert. I want to say thank you to him and, of course, you for listening. And again, follow us all over social media at Chatt It Up Sports and wherever you get your podcasts as well. We will be back with another episode dropping on Friday. Have a great rest of your day. Peace and love.